All right, welcome everybody to another video of me just coding. Been coding for Laravel for some time. I've actually been coding using Next.js, but I guess I want to continue doing Laravel because I have the goal in mind to completely change or create a new portfolio website. So then I can showcase all the different projects I worked on. And the projects are not only going to just be Laravel applications, they're probably going to be a mixture of Laravel and like a lot of .NET applications because there's .NET MVC, which is pretty much they're pretty much just using MVC just like Laravel does, but um, all their HTML or JS stuff is in CH in a file type called CSHTML. And if you want to do JavaScript, you would do it within a CSHTML. Now there is like an API version of just .NET where you just use maybe some type of front end framework like React or Vue or Angular, and then in the back end you just use the API. But that's another thing I need to start doing. I need to start actually showcasing what I'm trying to work on within every session. Because in this session, I am trying to add a login and registration logic. And I think it's already set up. I was doing some documentation, reading some documentation before starting the video, and Laravel has this starter kit called Laravel Fortify, and this package allows you already has these I guess the business logic that's created to create logins or registration. So I don't need to do any type of coding since it's already installed and the logic is already present. Uh, eh, so when I go into the resources, oh no, this is routes. Well, technically I'm in resources. So when I look into register and I go to login and stuff like that, it's going to there's already this code has already been created and it's already hitting an endpoint called like login or something like that or store. So actually, if you look at here, let me go to register actually because I want to just see something. So there's already routes called routes register. So in the directory of routes, if I go into the register directory and look for store, there's already a definition, a post request that's going to hit the endpoint of register. So actually, I want to make this still, I don't want to say alive, but I don't want this, I want this to still be present. And then I want to go back into the register component or page and just look at some stuff here. So let's see here. There is processing and errors. So processing is pretty much like once you hit the submit button, you can use a processing thing to show maybe a loading indicator to show that the data is actually being sent to the endpoint and it's being processed in the back end. And if there's any errors that shows up, you'll be able to filter them out based on the specific field name. So they have password input. Oh, let me look into this. Password input is a component. Okay. So let's actually just go into register real quick because we're looking at the page, the code of the page, but we haven't actually looked at the page in itself. And it's taking some time, but it's coming up. Say the name, email address, password, confirm password, and in the table, the users table, I have the name, email verified at, password, two-factor secret. We're not doing none of that stuff, but these are the fields. If you can see, I don't know if this is pretty hard to see. I need to actually go and look on my YouTube page. Whenever I actually upload something, I need to look into YouTube to see if it's hard to see some of these things because, they're fairly small. But this is already the predefined UI that's been delivered through the starter pack of Fortify. And I wanted to be able to tap into uh, this particular route, or this controller, registered user controller. But if I go into registered user controller, I don't see anything. You'll see the index that's, that's pretty much directed to here, register JS routes register, which is this, or no, it's this. No, it's this. It's this. Um, but if I go to the routes, if I go to like HTTP, like controller, I'm not going to be able to find it. You see? Because if I go to controllers right here, all I have is admin controller, controller, post controller, profile controller. Let me look into here. Maybe this is where it's supposed to be. No, it's not actually, because if you look here, it would just be Laravel, Fortify, HTTP, controllers, register user controller. Maybe the better question is, how do I access this controller, or how do I customize this controller? So I'm going to go on Google real quick and say, in Laravel, how do I access this? I put how do access. How do I access? Doesn't matter. I already got some answers. In Laravel, you don't directly modify or instantiate package controllers like Laravel because they live inside your vendor, your isolated vendor. Depending on your overall goals, you can access, customize, or override its behavior using three primary methods. Intercepting logic, I guess you could make an extension of it, right? Fortify is designed to offload its core logic into custom action classes inside your main application folder. You don't need to alter the controller to change how users validate or create it. So open API Fortify create new user. Interesting. Do I have that? I think I saw Fortify somewhere here. Actions. Create new user. So create new users is implemented by create new user as password validation. And here's the create to create a new user. But I'm curious about the logging in portions of it. Is this under actions as well? Now, what is concerns? Password validation rules, current password rules, required string, current password, profile validation rules. So within the create method, some profile rules. What's the profile rules? And it goes into a trait where you can do profile rules and basically assigning the validation rules to validate usernames. Interesting. Interesting, interesting, interesting. Open the actions for if I create, modify the create method to validation or hooks into the creation pipeline. Extending the controller via the service container. Wait, let me see the second one. Overriding the register route entirely. Open your routes web.php, define a manual pools. Route for register below your fortify service registration. Register my custom register. Blah, blah, blah. I don't even see that in the routes actually. Let me see here. Is it there? I don't believe I see it there. I see inertia. And there's the middleware. But I don't see it actually within the routes of the web. Now, extended controller via the service container. You want to preserve 4 to 5 internals, but inherit some of it from its foundation. You can extend from the vendor. Custom extends 4 to 5 register controller. Public function store. Definitive custom store. Code here. Interesting. Well, you know what? Let's first try to just create a new user. So at this moment, I have about 50 users. So I'm going to create a new user and I'm going to call it, I don't think I put my actual name yet. So I'm going to put Jermaine Forbes and I'm going to put j@example.com. Password, I don't know. I'm just going to put password. I'm just going to put password at. Choose your own. I'm going to choose my own password at. I'll put password at. And I'm going to create the account and I want to see what happens next. I'm assuming no thanks. Okay. So it sends me to a dashboard where there's empty blocks. Now let me look and just do a refresh or execution to see, okay, my information is here. Password has been hashed, and that's a good thing. Now I'm curious if they have rate limiters already established, but it transported me into dashboard because now I'm authenticated. And let me see. Let me go back into not this page. I want to go to the register. Wait, is it this? No, because this is the routes. This is admin, users, posts. I'm looking for the register. So once it completes, from what I'm looking at within the component, this form is going to go to store form. Um, and store form is going to give the the HTTP request, which is going to be a post, and tell you where the endpoint's going to be. And obviously, it gives you the, within the fields as a name, email address, password, and confirm password. And something happens after there is a successful authentication, which transports you to this page, the dashboard page. But I want to customize it to the point where I don't go to the dashboard page, but I go to somewhere else. And that's very important. And I don't see here where the logic, maybe it's in the routes where you go to store form. There's a store definition, store form. What is the URL here? Store form, it's store form. Yeah, that's the thing. I really don't like the idea of, because I had to go to the vendor folder. Let's go to the vendors just to see something. If I can find Fortify, I would think it's called Fortify. Fortify, be routes, resources, source, HTTP controllers, and registered user controller. Let's go here. So let me look into all this logic that's happening. So in create, you have you get the request, and then there's a register view response, and then there is some type of what are these methods called? They're not called shorteners. What are they called? They're called because there's facades, and then there's called, let me see, helper functions. Helper functions. So app is this helper function that's going to allow me to return to something. App. App function returns the service container instance. You may pass a class or interface name to resolve it from the container. So when I try to register, okay, this shows the registration view. So when I store it on store, there's a config, get the specified configuration value, fortify lowercase usernames, and request has fortify username, request merge. So get the username and string to lower this username. Okay. Then it sets off an event with the registered, and there's a user and requested boolean remember discard login. If request has session, then create the session and generate it, and then return register response class, which is a contract, and I want to look into it. And there's nothing there. Return app register response class. Now it still doesn't tell me, or at least give me indication of where it's supposed to go after there's a successful registration. Because maybe I want to change it up. Maybe I want to change it from the dashboard to some other layout. Because if you look into, oh, there's views here. No, this is a different one. If you go to, no, that's not the one. Oh, app. If you go to app, you have the layout names. You have welcome, or it starts with off, or it starts with settings, and then you can go to different, clearly go into different things. But it doesn't give me, at least looking at this, at the different stuff that I was digging into, it doesn't give me any indication of how I can just uh, redirect it to a different layout. Because I definitely want to change it up here. I don't want it just to have this thing, whatever this thing is supposed to be doing. Um, so now I gotta keep asking questions. Let me go into this one. Mm, in Laravel, how do I change uh, the response from fortifies fortifies registration controller? Create a custom response class. To change the registration response in Laravel Fortify, you need to override the register response contract in your application service container. This avoids editing vendor files and lets you cleanly customize both HTML redirects and JSON API responses. So create a new file like HT responses. Interesting. Wait, because I have requests here. I don't have responses. Do got a lot of requests though. Um, so create a new file, create the responses directory if it does not exist, implement the register response contract. Redirect to here, bind your custom class in the Fortify service provider. Fortify service provider. Do I have that already established? Let me see. Fortify service provider is here. So I I think this is where you put the registration, and this is all the things that will boot up once everything executes on runtime. So configure rate limiting. Ooh, I wonder what type of rate limiter for two-factor, for login, function request. So they transliterate string to lower input name request IP throttle key. Return limit per minute 5 by throttle key. Oh, this is already here by default. I like this is the thing. I like a lot of things Laravel's doing. When I go into different type of frameworks, though there's great things other frameworks are doing. I think Laravel is just really on top of their stuff. It's just sort of weird. Even though I like AI and stuff like it's sort of weird that I can't well maybe they were talking about this. Disabling views. Let me go back to I'm just reading more documentation about Fortify using customizing user authentication. Fortify will automatically retrieve and authenticate a user based on the provided credentials and an authentication guard that is configured for your application. However, you may sometimes wish to have full customization over how login credentials are authenticated and users retrieved. Thankfully, yours has authenticate using method. This method accepts a closure, which receives the incoming HTTP request. So I think I'm supposed to put this within the service provider of Fortify, if I'm getting that correctly. App provider, sir. Yeah, all of the authentication views rendering logic may be customized using the appropriate methods available via the Laravel Fortify class. Typically, you should call this method from the boot method of your applications. Fortify will take care of the defining login route that returns this view. So boot, login view. Okay, but what are all the Fortify methods? So if I want it to go into a specific view for login, um, great, I just had to call this. That's awesome. Here's the question. And here's the way customizing user. Thankfully, Fortify, let me look at the code that they're using. They have a closure and they have a user where and user hash dot check quest password is similar to user password. If it is, return user. That's fine with the authentication. You may customize the authentication guard used by Fortify within your application's Fortify configuration file. However, you ensure that the configured guard is an implementation of eliminate contracts off stateful guard. If you're attempting to use Laravel to authenticate on a SPA, you should use Laravel's default web guard, Laravel Sanctum. Customizing the authentication pipeline. Oh, well, obviously the authentication is working. I think the next step, and I guess I should have checked if the login's working. Because the next step I really want to do is not really tinker with the login process or the logic that's used to authenticate a user, but more so I want to be able to just change where if it's successful, I want to be able to change where it's going to be located, where they're going to be redirected to. That's all I want to do for the user, for the login or the registration. And then after that, I'll be like, okay, this is good. So in terms of progress, I'm pretty sure the login actually works as well. Uh, but I think with this objective that I have, what I'm going to try to do is just try to redirect them. So I need to just go into the Fortify service provider and do login view. So I guess there's like a register view and just change it to wherever I need to change it to and see how that works. And if it works fine, great. And then after that, I'll try to refactor and organize code, maybe do some PHP unit testing to some of the stuff, clean some stuff up because I have been using some types and interfaces, but I put them within the pages as opposed to put them in this central place. So there's a lot of stuff I want to try to do. In any case, thanks for watching. Hopefully you have a good day. The end.